everyone. My name is Daniela Tirado. I'm a first year master's student in forestry, and today I will be talking about fire in the Jemez Mountains. This topic relates directly to my thesis, and it's one of my interests. I wanted to start off by giving you an idea as to where the Jemez Mountains are located. They are in northern central New Mexico, and this is a map of the Jemez Mountains that include the Santa Fe National Forest, the Valles Caldera National Preserve, and a few surrounding communities. I'm also going to describe the different fire regimes the Jemez Mountains seem to have experienced over the past few hundred of years. This information is directly taken from one of the articles we read in class. It starts off by describing a period referred to as the pre-colonial, which is from 1590 or before, characterized by low frequency, low severity fires. Basically, all of these fires were ignited by lightning, and from the literature that I read, canopy cover was not usually affected. It was primarily surface fires, burning all of that fine fire fuel. Then you have the congregación period between 1590 to 1680, more frequent but still low severity fires due to higher population densities. Then you have 1680 to about 1860, decadal or subdecadal frequency, and now moderate severity. As you know, colonial human settlements introduced millions of grazing animals. In this area was mostly sheep grazing. Between 1860 to 1990, you have active fire suppression through forest management policies, which led the mixed conifer forests in the Jemez Mountains to become very overgrown and very dense. Now, what do the Jemez Mountains look now, and how are they responding to climate change and fires? Unfortunately, the Jemez Mountains, out of all of New Mexico, are experiencing the largest and highest frequency fires. These are just a few examples of those fires. You have the Cerro Grande in 2000, burning 43,000 acres, highlighted in yellow. Just 10 years later, you have Las Conchas fire in 2011, burning 156,000 acres, and you can see that a big chunk of these fires overlap. In 2013, you have the Thompson Ridge burning 24,000 acres. And what makes these fires so different from the past is not only that they're coming and burning very large areas at once, but that they burn at a very high frequency. So they're not only coming to remove fine fire fuels, maybe introduce some healthy nutrients to the soil, but they kind of come and destroy the whole forest. I want to talk about endemic species because they can be great ecosystem health indicators. And in just a second, I'll talk about how endemic species relate directly to the Jemez Mountains. Overall, their presence, abundance, and well-being can reflect the condition of the environment. If endemic species start to decline or disappear, it can often signal that the ecosystem is undergoing stress. They tend to be very sensitive to even small changes in the environment, such as shifts in temperature, water availability, land use, or pollution. And lastly, protecting endemic species not only protects themselves, but also the ecosystem as a whole. Now, endemic species in the Jemez Mountains, specifically the Jemez salamander, which has evolved to only live in a small area of the Jemez Mountains, as far as we know. They were deemed endangered by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Department back in 2013, and they happen to be one of the most endangered salamanders in all of the United States. They live in fragmented communities, potentially because individuals can only travel up to 8 kilometers square. And this is just a map, a couple of maps highlighting the critical habitat of the Jemez salamander, also known as Plethodon new-mexicanus. Now, what makes these salamanders not only susceptible to changes in climate change and fire, but also very unique to New Mexico? They are the only terrestrial species of salamanders in all of New Mexico, so this means that they live mostly underground. They come out during the monsoon season, typically July through September, to feed and reproduce. They also don't have lungs. So these salamanders use a process called cutaneous respiration, which can make them very sensitive to soil toxins in the environment as well as soil moisture because they depend on soil moisture for hydration. These concerns led me to conduct a systematic review, and I specifically wanted to know how have fire regimes changed in the Jemez Mountains? How do fires or fire exclusion affect the Jemez salamander? And how should we manage fires in the Jemez Mountains? I conducted this systematic review using CAB abstracts. I had to be very general with my protocol because the Jemez Mountains are not very well studied, and the Jemez salamander is also not very well studied. This is primarily because being a terrestrial salamander, they're very difficult to observe, and ever since they become endangered, um, their research regarding this species is very limited. So I use Jemez Mountains and wildfire or fire, and I included or hemisalamander or Plethora mexicanus. A total of 32 papers came back, and only about 19 to 20 relate to my topic. Now, why did I not use some of these papers? There were several that talked about grasslands, and as you know, the relationship and dynamic of fires and grasslands is different from a mixed conifer. Also, the hemisalamander only lives in mixed conifer forests. There were a couple that talked about bears or elk. And there was one that talked about how fires affect archaeological features. Now, getting into some of the results of my papers and what I found, all of the papers that I read talk about how fire affects, in one way or another, mixed conifers. There was one that talked about the geological features within the hemisalamander habitat and if they prefer certain soil characteristics, and it was found that they do. Diet for the hemisalamander was very important and how they vary across different fire severities. So mites, ants, and beetles tend to respond differently. Pyrogenetic carbon, which is just carbon that burned. There was only like one paper. Erosion after fire. Creating models to predict mega fires and predict better management policies. Understanding the overall history of the Jemez Mountains, what we have done wrong and what we can improve on, and soil physical properties such as carbon, phosphorus, and nitrogen. And I still have a couple of papers to go through, but these are the most of my references. Thank you.